Hello, traders. Welcome to another episode of Finally Friday. I hope you had a good week, and I hope you're going to have even a better weekend. So today I am going to talk about what is you as a person and a trader versus our DNA and our responses to trading. And I think it's extremely important to understand that because many traders sometimes get depressed over their results, or worse, they get angry, or they shut down, or they stop trading, and they basically have responses that are not in line, or responses that are not positive and not in line with what they should be. Let me just explain a little bit further because it's a rather complex topic and it took me some time to really understand that. So what traders fail, and I don't use that word a lot, fail. Sometimes I use more moderate words, but I think it's a complete failure on behalf of beginner traders to understand that we are driven by a certain DNA. We are driven by certain responses, that it's DNA that has been there for billions of years, and our responses are ones that are there regardless of our personality. So we could be more linear thinker, logical thinkers, more emotional, somewhere on the spectrum of in between, and yet some of our responses would be exactly the same, and it has nothing to do with your personality. It's just the way we are. It's just the way our chemicals are balanced. Let me give you a very simple example. Let's say that you walk on the street and you find $200. You're happy. You put it in your pocket, you move on, and you're happy. And 5 minutes later, you forget about it. You lose $50, and you will think about it a whole day, and it will be a much more painful experience. And this example in itself, where pain is much greater than pleasure, and it's penetrating our mind in a much deeper way, is just one characteristic that I'm aware of, and there are probably thousands that I'm not aware of, where we as individuals think that this is just our personality. We will think that this is the way we are as individuals. Me, Matt, you, Mike, John, Brandon, or whatever your name is. You think that this is just you, but it's not. So when we approach trading, you have to understand that as a beginner trader, many of your responses to the market are ones that are there because of your DNA, which means a lot of those things you cannot take personally. Certain failures will occur and certain responses will occur because this is just our DNA. Over time, just like it took me many, many years to realize that. And this is just something that oddly, maybe they do talk about it, but I don't come across that. People talk about psychology of trading, but they really don't emphasize enough the fact that some responses that we have are not just ours individually, but they are just as a group, and they occur to everyone. Because again, traders will take those things personally, and they will think it's their failure. A lot of our responses, a lot of our impulses are anti-logical. I don't know why, but I guess we're not perfect creatures. You know, some people, when they lose money, they get shut down and they don't trade anymore. Some people get into vengeance trading and they try to make it back. So there's different groups of people that respond in certain ways. But it's not your individual personality that caused that. It's just, well, of course, it's your actions in the end personally that lead to that. but it's just a lot more complex than what you think. So, the goal of this podcast is to start separating you as a trader and the natural responses that you have versus, okay, what you should do right and what is part of your personality. And when people say you should adapt your own style of trading and not try and imitate somebody, this is where you will count a lot more. Again, in my opinion, not a psychologist, so I want to say this is an opinion. I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a psychologist, and wanted to share that with you, right? I don't have any authority in some sort of a medical field. All those observations are ones that I've just made over time, just being very conscious about trading and thinking about it, and a lot of other interests that I have in life that just made me think about trading just from a little bit of a different angle. So a little bit of a heavy topic today, I get it, but I'm going to try and make it lighter as we go. So we're talking about developing a system which is your own personality, that is really more in line with your character, so you have less and less and less, hopefully, of those DNA responses. And I believe that if you trade a method and a system that is not entirely yours, where you try to imitate others, or you're trying to work with a model that you think is good, that, for example, you're trying to imitate some guru, or you're trying to imitate somebody that got you into trading, this is where a lot of the failures will occur, because you're not getting into basically a place where it's your responses, but it's going to be your DNA responses. You know, your typical reactions that could go from depression to just not trading, to just dropping it, or going into vengeance trading, or all the typical mistakes that people talk about. And everybody talks about the same mistakes over and over and over again, because again, those are not individual mistakes. Yes, they're individual from a perspective that they do affect your account and it's your capital. You're not sharing this capital with other traders. But I always look at it as a collective group behavior. So the more you focus on building your own method based on what you feel comfortable with, less agreeing with the convention, the better off you will be. And you will have less and less of those reactions. Let me give you an example. So today I spoke to one of my good customers, really great guy, and I feel that, you know, he's trying to learn trading. And the person he's learning trading from my understanding, or from what I know, has a very different nature than his. So, you know, when you try to basically imitate a trader or get into his head and understand what he's doing, and trying to do that, you're skipping so much, because what leads a good trader to trade is really a process of so many refinements, so many failures that have led him finally to be at a place where he is comfortable. And all of a sudden, you or anybody else tries to skip this entire part and just get to the final part, which is really making the money. But in that process where you're trying to skip everything and you're trying to imitate somebody or trade at somebody else's method. And what do I mean by somebody else's method? Obviously, I don't blame you, right? So obviously, I don't judge. All those podcasts are not pointing a finger. That's really important to understand, because even myself, when I was learning, that's exactly what I was doing. I was reading books. Okay, I'll use this moving average. I'll do this. Okay, I'll use this market profile. I'll do this, and this will give me a better edge. But where I failed in all of that, so I would be the one first to admit that I failed in it too, because I didn't have the understanding. This is why I'm making those podcasts. So hopefully it would help you. So essentially, again, if you're trying to imitate somebody else's system, you're skipping a whole evolutionary I should call it, process that the trader has gone through, and he's trying to teach you really what his final decisions are without understanding how he got there. But he got there based on his character. And by the way, this is a big problem with many educators today in the industry. They all try to lure you in with the returns that they make. I don't even know if their returns are real or not. I don't verify returns, but I'm sure there's a lot of fake gurus out there. But they show you the bottom line of where they're at. And you're saying, well, this is what I've done. But they can't even explain themselves the process that they went through because of a lot of the mental process and the exercise and everything that they went through is something so subconscious that sometimes it's very hard to explain. If you are a successful trader or an experienced trader and you've been in trading the markets for a long time, or I hope you will get to a point where you're successful at trading, somebody might approach you and say, well, how do you make money? You say, well, I use this, and that. They say, that's it? That's all you do? Because many times that's what the traders do. They're like, you just do that and you make money? That's it? Well, of course, they'd like to believe that that's the only thing that's required to make money. Use, two moving average, support resistance, some sort of a market profile, Fibonacci, and that's it. They don't understand the whole thought process of your entire experience of risk management, experience of entry. So basically, all those things that they've accumulated over time and subconscious experience that they can't explain. And guess what? You will not be able to explain that either. So if somebody comes to you and you teach them everything there is to know about trading, assuming you are successful, you will skip so many parts that have made you successful, and not because you're dishonest, not because you're trying to hide certain things, because not everything happens on the surface. Some things are happening in the back of your mind. It's not only in trading, it's in business, it's in every other, in any area where you look up to somebody who is successful and does things, and then he says, well, how do you do it? And he'll say, hey, this is what I do. He'll say, that's it. But there's so much more that they don't say. And again, not because they're being dishonest, it's because not everybody has the skill of explaining what unconsciously happens in their brain. It's a very evolved process from an educator. And what I see today, it's like, oh, look, you look at the chart here, you look at the bid and ask, you look at this, support resistance. Totally different thought process that occurs in their mind that they cannot convey. So now that you know that, okay, so now that you know two things. The first thing that you know right now is basically that you have to trade a system, which is your method, because if you don't, what will happen is basically you will have the natural responses that human beings have, more and more and more. That's the first thing that you learned, right? The second thing that you learned, even when you learn a process, a lot of things happen on the subconscious level that a lot of people can't explain, right? So let's try and put you in a certain direction here. So the direction that I would like to put you in is one where you first find a method that fits you. I'm going to tell you this. Do not listen to what conventions are saying. Meaning that if you come across 20 people, 30 people, 50 people that use a 5-minute chart in day trading, it does not mean you have to use it. If it is, it is. I'm not saying that you shouldn't. Don't focus on the 5-minute chart. Let's say it's a 3-minute chart, because people sometimes take things so literally. So let's say you come across 20 people that are using 2.25 second charts, right? Whatever it is, just making up a number, and they'll use it. And then you're trying to use it and it's unsuccessful. So don't use it. You have to find what you're comfortable with. You have to find the frequency of your trading. You have to find the risk management. You have to find the right support resistance. And it's your support resistance until you find the edge. And you evolve that way to become a better and better trader. The more you will find a method that seems to match you, okay, match your method, your temperament, the better it is. Because here's what's going to happen. You will trade at a frequency that you like. You will trade time frames that you like. You will make decisions when you want. And then you will also be comfortable making decisions as far as your risk management, which is when trades don't go well. And then you'll make decisions when markets do well. So this process, you will start getting more and more and more comfortable, and you will get comfort. Do not get into situations where, for example, you go and trade size, which is above and beyond what you should trade. Just like I gave you the example of you finding $200 on the street, which is a certain level of happiness on the spectrum, versus losing $50, which hurts a lot more than the happiness that you had. That's what's going to happen in your trading. If you trade quantities do not match your personality, when you will lose, you will get so much more I would say sadder, depressed, or thought paralyzed, or God forbid, or anything like that. I don't mean physically paralyzed, but just thought. You will not be able to formulate thoughts, right? Of trading, and it just sends you kind of in sort of a brain freeze, and you're like, I don't want to touch it anymore. So I don't think there is a possible way to equate, between finding money and losing money. I don't think that I can change your DNA in such a way that you will be happier to find the $200 than losing $50. That's not going to happen. But I think the fact that you're conscious about it, and I think the fact that you know about it, and now that you know that we have this, just one of those things. Again, this is just one example, and you will find those examples in your own behavior as you trade. You will say, okay, if this is the experience, I don't want to make a lot and lose a lot. Because when I make a lot, I'm happy. But when I lose a lot, then I'm not happy. I get depressed, and I do things that are really not in line with my personality that cause me to lose more and more and more. During that process of finding what's right for you, you will start balancing it out. Again, I don't believe that certain things you can change. Look, I don't care if you trade 20 years or 30 years or 40 years. Everybody is into that nonsense and bullshit that you can control, your emotions fully. You cannot. Different environments will cause you to behave in certain ways, and you will, over time, because you know those things right now, because you've listened to the podcast, you will say, okay, you know what? This environment is not one that fits me. All of a sudden, I'm doing things where I don't recognize myself. And that's the key. You will start doing things where you don't recognize yourself, and that's exactly where you should say, okay, maybe that's not the environment that I should trade in, because I'm reacting in ways that are not appropriate for me. And it's really becoming very magical that way. It's becoming magical because you're starting to find yourself in the process. What's beautiful about trading, and what people don't realize, that it's not only a mechanical business. The challenges of trading are psychological, methodological, finding the right method, time schedule, review, staying motivated, not getting too depressed, and overcoming a lot of things. So it's a really complex field because it encompasses so many things, and even the ability to just sometimes block somebody else's idea. Like, there are people that are, excuse me for my French, when it comes to trading, they're on YouTube, they have their own show, they're so full of shit that, and excuse me for my French again, that I just turn it on because I just don't want to be influenced by them. Part of as I go through life, there's certain people I just don't want to listen to them because I don't want to be influenced by them. Now, some people may say, hey, listen, you're closed-minded, you should listen to other ideas. I think that I'm open-minded enough to listen to those who didn't turn trading into a theoretical field, and they work from theory, such as those that keep on repeating in every lesson the same thing: cut your losses short, let your profits run, the trend is your friend. All those nonsense sentences that really don't lead anywhere. So what I'm trying to address is real topics that people really open up. So my colleagues, that I respect in the trading community, they're very straightforward people. And they always talk about the challenges of trading, regardless of how long they have traded. They're honest about their wins. They're honest about their losses. When I talk about things such as, finding your personality, in trading, this is not just a simple sentence that a lot of people can say. Hey, just trade your method. Find a method that suits you without any depth, right? It's like, what does it mean? System that suits me. This is why I'm trying to give a little bit more depth to what is a system that suits you. To talk about your risk tolerance, your capital, your frequency. I'm in the futures business, right? So a lot of people want to trade futures because it's a leverage business. So let me also take this opportunity to say that leverage trading is very risky. There's a substantial risk of loss in futures trading, and past performance is not indicative of future results. Trade only risk capital. Okay. So, when it comes to futures, for example, as an asset, I'm not claiming that it's for everyone. Do I want a lot of customers at Optimus Futures that I like to service? Yes. But I never advocate that futures trading is for everyone. It takes a certain skill. It takes a certain level of risk tolerance to trade a leveraged product. There are places that are not leveraged products. There are stocks, for example, that you can have cash and you cannot lose more than your initial investment unless you're leveraged as well, of course. But there are things like that, and I've learned over time to respect it, and I've spoken to many people that said, look, I'm afraid to trade futures. I'm afraid to do this. So don't trade futures. Look, don't. Why do you have to? So once you start feeling comfortable, with your personality, once you start feeling comfortable recognizing that, hey, look, I have certain limitations as a person. I think in a certain way. Why do I have to be like everybody else? Do you have to dress like everyone else? Do you have to do things like everybody else? And this is where the trading comes into, and this is where trading should be obviously the same way. And on a final note, I wanted to tell you that because of trading, I started thinking about life in a certain way, where I can adapt even friends or colleagues or my life day to day in an environment that I feel comfortable with and not follow the crowds. Anything that follows the crowds in trading leads to a disaster. We saw it with tons of examples, in the last hundreds of years. Recently with the meme stocks. That is just the latest example of crowd following, trying to do what the masses are doing without saying, okay, what is the risk to me as an individual trader in doing that? And that's what you should always ask yourself. Is this something that I can adapt as an individual, any method or anything like that? Now, we all start somewhere. We can all start with certain basics. We can start with the basics of support resistance and moving average and RSI and all those technical indicators that are available pretty much on every platform. But the way we use it could be very individual. Our observations could be very, very individual. And this is my goal. My goal is for you at this point to find an individual type environment that you feel comfortable with. And at that point, again, is to get to a place where you find yourself so you don't have reactions that you don't even recognize in yourself. Because some of you can clearly say, I behaved in a manner that is really not me. Lost control, did things in trading that are just like, you look back after you did it at the end of the trading day and you say to yourself, how did I do that? This is so not me. And the reason that you're saying all those things is because, again, this is where our DNA took over you, because you were so outside of your own personal element that your DNA took over. The reactions, the chemicals in our brain, the DNA and everything else took over. So don't think for a minute that you're always in control. Now, I always talked in many podcasts, finding your own system, right? I know that I keep on repeating it all the time. I get it. It's sometimes boring, but it's the right thing. Don't think just because I repeat it in some podcast again and again, it's because, I have nothing to talk about. There's tons of stuff to talk about. But I always try to put it also in some sort of a context that would help you understand, where I'm coming from on this. And further to emphasize a point, in any argument, if you say, this is my belief system, or this is, what led me to this belief system, you always have to justify it, right? And you have to say, well, so this is where I'm coming in, and I'm saying, well, this is where I'm trying to justify my belief system in learning to recognize individuals, that we are with our personality, combined with the DNA and everything else that God gave us in our body. I'm going to end this podcast and again, wishing you a phenomenal weekend. Take time sometimes away from trading. Read different books, get other interests. You will find that there's a lot of things in life that can help you out in trading, not just in trading itself, because it's the business of decision making. So sometimes I have read other books or been exposed to other videos on YouTube or I've listened to where it affected the way and understood the way humans think. It's just a personal interest of mine. Let me also give a plug to our great platform, Optimus Flow. Good platform, free, has everything you need to execute, really good. All those technical indicators I'm talking about, all the basics, they're there. Great to trade from the chart, from the dome. It's really good, and it's free. You don't need to pay for anything as a beginner trader. It's just, you need good execution, you need good display, you need good visual design that makes it easy to navigate, charts that you can see. And I hope that, what we brought you, you will really like. And also, as far as I'm concerned, nothing is perfect. Everything is built on servers and electronics and all things can go down. But I find our system most of the time is up. It's a stable system that you can trade. So check it out. It's on our website. It's on www.optimusfutures.com. Find Optimus Flow on the trading platform. Give it a shot. I'll be more than happy to talk to you. More than happy to consult and help you out. Our phone number is 1-800-771-6748. If you're overseas, it's 561-367-8686. And obviously, if you need you prefer or need some assistance, you can always send emails to support@optimusfutures.com. Our support team will pick it up. If those are questions for me specifically, you can say this is for Matt, and they'll refer to me. So again, have a great weekend with the family. I hope you will get good weather. The guys that are out there in the West USA, I know you guys are going through a heat wave. I hope it will cool down a little bit. Stay at home, drink lots of water. All the best, and until the next podcast. Thank you. Bye-bye.